Welcome to West Virginia Beer Roads, a podcast all about beer from a West Virginia perspective. I'm Erin McCoy, here with my podcast partner, Charles Bockway.
The city of Parkersburg, West Virginia, sits along the beautiful Ohio River, which has long been an important factor in commerce between the eastern and midwestern states. Parkersburg had its first brewery way back in the 1800s. And I think it was 1864, actually. And it was also among the very first breweries in the very first cities in West Virginia to have a new brewery established during the microbrewing era of the 1990s. That brewery at the North End Tavern is still going strong today. And in more recent years, with the explosion of craft beer popularity, a new distribution brewery was established there and appropriately named Parkersburg Brewing Company, actually kind of a namesake for the original brewery back in the 1800s. We're honored to have as guests on our program today, two of the co-founders and owners of the current Parkersburg Brewing. First, we have Dan Curtis. Welcome, Dan. And second, it's Walt Owens. Welcome, Walt, to West Virginia Beer Roads. And also we have with us Erin McCoy, our co-host. And Erin, I'm going to throw it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Charles. So Dan, let's start out before the beginning of the brewery. How did you two originally meet and get to know each other?
Well, so Walt's actually married to my sister.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Walt's my brother-in-law. So we met that way. Walt was actually home brewing before I was and got me interested in it. And, I ended up going a little bit overboard with it, given my engineering and obsessive compulsive personality, and actually built a small electric brewery in my basement, very similar to, a small pilot system that we have now. And then, Walt and I brewed several times together and, started to have several conversations about how much we enjoyed it and thought we were doing a pretty decent job and decided to give it a try for real.
Sounds good. So Walt, opening a commercial brewery is a big step from home brewing. When did you first decide that you wanted to make that jump?
So, it is a big step. And, it's not for the lighthearted either, right? Yeah,
I'm sure.
You have to be committed on this, both from a product perspective and a business perspective. But to be honest, I think when Dan and I were actually initially homebrewing together, exchanging ideas, it became pretty clear that from a product perspective, between his background in engineering and what we had both taught each other in brewing, my background in chemistry and quality management, it became pretty clear that we had the right concepts, the right aspects to actually pull a business together. It really boiled down to how do we finance it. And I think we put our collective heads together with the folks that we brought to the management team and the ownership team to give this a go, to initially finance the more of an experiment, to be quite honest, back in 2015, 2016, which progressed, quite frankly, into a successful run for us since we opened in September of 16.
Why did you believe you could be successful when opening the brewery?
So, from my perspective, it's all about the people and the talent you can bring together. But it's also about the product. We are very science-driven in what we do in the brewery, and I think that reflects strongly in the products that we produce. We like to be a bit edgy in our recipe designs, and to be willing to take risks in the types of products that we produce. And also not be afraid to stick your neck in a noose, so to speak, to go out there and put your product on the line against the top competition in the world. At the end of the day, I think if you're willing to take those steps, you're willing to be a little bit edgy, you're willing to be aggressive and not be afraid of risk, and you bring a great product to market. I think those are the key ingredients that really have weighed into our success.
And I think you've had a few, probably a few, well, there's been a lot of progress since you opened. I know the physical plant there, your equipment has grown. Kind of give us a quick rundown on where you stand with your brew house and your fermentation space and all that, everything that's down there in the actual making of the product side.
Yeah, so when we opened in 2016, we actually had 28 barrels worth of fermentation capacity on a 7-barrel brew house. We're still on our 7-barrel brew house, but now we have 63 barrels of fermentation capacity, and we're frequently operating a 1-barrel pilot system for tap room and test batches that we've got currently 3 barrels of fermentation capacity there. So significantly grown the 7-barrel brew house fermentation capacity. We also started out kegging only, and about 18 months ago, we added a canning line that we can do about a case a minute. So those were really the two big expansion activities that we've done in the last few years.
And how many employees are you up to now on the brew house side?
So in the brew house.
And distribution too. I would count anybody that's, on that side.
Yeah, so I mean, in the brewery side of the business, we've got about 5 employees right now. And then, of course, on the brew pub side, being more restaurant driven, there's, probably 12 or 13 there.
Yeah, you mentioned, of course, the brew pub, and that's the brew pub and restaurant, which is another significant side to this business operation. Maybe give us a little rundown on how it's set up, the size of the place, how many, the capacity and all that.
Yeah, so, pre-COVID, we were at about 100 seating capacity. We've added some seating. We're technically at 50% pre-COVID seating. However, we've been able to add some outdoor seating and some seating in areas that we didn't previously have seating. So we're operating around 75 to 80% of the seating capacity that we had pre-COVID after making some changes there. We have a full menu, full kitchen staff. It's a full service restaurant, where we serve some really good food, and of course, all of our beers.
Yeah. How many days a week are you open?
So we're open 5 days a week. We're closed on Sundays and Mondays. We're open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 4 to 10 p.m. And so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 4 to 10 p.m. and then Friday and Saturday from 11:30 a.m. to 11 p.m.
All right, well, I don't want to get too far into this as far as details until I get something to drink. So guys, I think it's time for a Parkersburg Brewing beer, don't you think?
Yeah.
Let's get started. Tell us about what beer we're going to try today. I actually have 2 here, if you can see them.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to try first, Aaron? Let's go with Luponic.
Yeah, go ahead, Walt.
Yeah, so Luponic Rhapsody, very classical New England IPA. So you should get some haziness in the pour. As you're pouring this, what I would tell you to do is to pour it about 3/4 and then give it a good swirl in the can to get the rest of the good stuff off the bottom. What you get in this beer is very little what I typically term hot bite in IPAs. It's a very smooth drinking IPA, and as a lot of New England's, you have some fantastic stone fruit and tropical hops flavors in the beer. And classically, it should be a little cloudy, as you're seeing there in the New England style. You should fairly mild on the head retention, so you get some great flavors and actually a really great nose and aroma that comes off of this beer. This is really done with some massive hop additions in the late portions of the process, in the whirlpool process. And then, although I'm not going to give the secret ingredient away, it does utilize a very unique fruit during fermentation to give it a little bit more of a tropical boost.
Thanks. Well, it is delicious.
Well, that's a secret ingredient, Walt, that whatever that unnamed fruit would be. And I didn't know. Well, I didn't know. This is the first time I've had this beer, and it's very good. I'm sorry, Aaron, go ahead.
That's okay. Much like starting any small business, starting a brewery is going to be filled or can be filled with pitfalls and difficulties. So what were some of your most challenging experiences in getting Parkersburg Brewing up and running? Maybe something that if you had to do over, you might do differently. Dan, you go first.
Oh,
We don't make it easy.
yeah. Yeah, I can think of something. I just don't know that I want to talk about it.
You can be vague if you need to be.
No, I think, I mean, honestly, as a startup brewery, right? We had spent a lot of time and a lot of effort in developing a business plan and looking at all the pluses and minuses and the pitfalls. And I think honestly, one of the hardest decisions for a small brewery like us is, do you self-distribute or do you get involved with distributors? And it's a very, very difficult decision to make. We attempted to do self-distribution in the beginning. The problem is there's just too many trees between towns in this beautiful state of ours, which requires a lot of driving and a lot of resources. So, we ended up going with the distribution model to help us reach the areas that we couldn't reach on our own. So I think those are some things that, you really don't think about when you're putting the business model together that have a significant impact, on how you get your product out there, as well as, impact on margins and everything else.
What about you, Will? Do you want to address that?
I think Dan probably knocked the number one issue that I think if we looked at it with the glasses and lenses we have today, we may have a slightly different perspective on how we manage that, and maybe be a little broader in our thought process around distribution. But I think the other thing that we have learned, and it's something that you really need a crystal ball for. And I spoke earlier about taking risks. And one thing we may have thought about earlier in our life cycle was expanding sooner. But it's very tough to predict, especially in this West Virginia market, which I frankly believe is probably one of the toughest craft beer markets in the United States. But we've certainly, found ourselves sometimes scrambling on capacity, and I think we've solved a number of those problems this year, even during a pandemic. But nonetheless, that's certainly something that, in retrospect, you think about capacity and volume maybe in a different way.
Yeah,
sure. Well, the brewing industry is definitely one of the most highly regulated businesses in the country. What's your experience with our regulators here in West Virginia been?
That is a loaded question.
I'll let you go, Walt.
Yeah, I figured you would let me handle this one. Look, I think that West Virginia, it's not a matter of the regulators. I think our working relationship with the West Virginia ABCA is actually quite good, if not remarkable. We do get responses. I'll just say it. Dan and I were able to get a beer approval today, and I think we submitted all the necessary paperwork less than a week ago. And that's just because of, good solid communications, and frankly, making sure your documentation's top notch when it goes in, and that you're not making it difficult on the reviewers.
Right.
I think that the West Virginia regulators, the ABCA themselves, are probably a bit handcuffed in this state by old and maybe outdated regulation.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think
we've addressed that somewhat in some previous episodes. And
I think it's critical for us as an industry in the state of West Virginia to look outside to our neighboring states, some of the states that have demonstrated great success in craft beer, and how the regulations operate and how they interact with the resident brewers. And I'm not saying anything that I haven't said to our regulators in Charleston. So I think it's recognized, and I think there's opportunities for us to make legislative change to broaden the industry in the state of West Virginia.
Dan, you have anything to add?
I think he summed it up pretty good.
All right. Well, overall, what has been your all's biggest takeaway so far as your biggest learning experience? Well, we'll start with you.
Biggest learning experience for me, and I think actually for our business, is management of the distribution network. And we're still learning.
Sure. Well, it's ever changing, based on the market. So I can understand that. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And I think related to that is, and it's definitely that distribution relationship related is forecasting and making sure that you're producing the right amount of the right beer every time. It's a real difficult puzzle to put together.
Yeah. So when you first started your business plan and decided that you would go to be a distribution focused brewery, not just focused on your tap room. I mean, there are a lot of small breweries that just basically do tap room sales and everything, 90% of their stuff's done out of their tap room. We got a lot of them in West Virginia like that. You made that decision to be not that. Why initially do you think that you wanted to go into distribution?
Well, so I'll jump on that, Walt, then you can chime in. So,
Sure.
Our vision is much bigger than, a site on Market Street in Parkersburg, West Virginia. We love that site. We love our employees. We love what we've done there. But even from the beginning, distribution is the largest part of our business plan, our model, and our vision. And we really intend to be a multi-state regional brewery, here at some point in the near future, not just, West Virginia and a little bit of Ohio. So our vision is much, much larger than where we're at today.
Yeah, I know you're in Ohio now, right? In at least a few counties or you're...
Yeah, so we're licensed in Ohio now.
Okay.
Still working to move some product there. All of that happened right in the middle of COVID, which really slowed things down. But we're definitely moving in that direction.
Now you're in all 55 counties of West Virginia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a lot to tackle anyway,
Sure.
because like you said earlier, when you try to do self-distribution, you find out how big the state is and how far apart accounts are,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's hard to make money doing that. But I mean, I know a lot of people are trying that, and I guess the book's still out of whether it's going to be a real success for other breweries. But you guys, went with regular beer distributors, a network of those. And I think as in any area where you have to have multiple distributors, and that's a thing in West Virginia, most people don't just have one or two, they'll have 4 or 5 or 6 or, in different parts of the state. And that managing that process, it's complicated, as you've kind of alluded to. And I think it also then, it also takes you a little away, or it can, from your retailer, because you don't directly deal with retailers as much because the distributors handle that. How do you handle that, though, that relationship with retailers and making yourself known there?
So I think that's a really important point, Charles, that, we've attempted to manage from the beginning, but I think, become smarter as we've learned. And that is, we've got to have our own presence in the field. We have to have a sales guy out there in the field visiting accounts, right? Asking questions, being up on what their needs are, what their interests are, making sure they know what we have available, what's coming out new, solving any issues that they might have, whether it be with us or our distributor, right? Really trying to be a problem solver and pushing the name in the market. Walt?
I think that's exactly right. I think it's about the brand representation by a sales representative or a group of sales representatives in the market that can actually move the product, give us exposure. It's also a customer service aspect, as Dan mentioned. It allows us to get feedback. What are our actual end customers seeing, feeling, and tasting with the product, and resolving their issues? It makes us a better partner for them in the long run, even though we're separated from them by the distributor to an extent. But I think, at least within our distribution network, the sales representation into the retail accounts has actually been quite welcomed.
Well, I think that's something I'm glad to hear you respond that way, because it's something that small breweries often don't put a lot of attention on. And too often. I mean, they hire a distributor or sign with a distributor, and then they don't really manage their stuff anymore. You know, and that's a mistake. It takes marketing. You have to market no matter whether you have a distributor or not. And I think you guys realize that. You've had good Bruce, great guy. Helped get me some beer, and I mean, I got a plug in for him. And then you used to have Amber. I remember her, a good market representation out at festivals and doing a meeting and greeting and working the tap room too. I mean, I don't know, you've had, and I don't know all your people, but I think you've had some really good people in that. And I'm glad you do appreciate that, the need for that level of representation.
It's actually, Charles, I think more important than we can afford to give it, the focus it needs right now, right? I would love to have more people in the field with an even bigger presence. That just takes time.
Yeah.
No doubt. You took the words right out of my mouth, Dan.
Then one
there are a
last.
number of things. I'm sorry.
I got one last thing about distribution, and that is the challenge. And we see this. It's not just in West Virginia. Listen, I've been to plenty of other states and gotten beer that was a little old on the shelf. It's like that's a real struggle for craft beer, because there's a store that wants to have 200 beers and they probably can sell 150 of them, you know. And is there anything you do to deal with, you know, is it code dating, open code dating? I mean, how do you handle letting, you know, being transparent with freshness in your canned product?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Charles. So we have lot numbering on our cans. I'll call it smart lot numbering. It's not real obvious to the consumer what that lot number means, but it tells us when it was brewed, where it was brewed. You should see it there stamped on the can.
Yes, I do. That's it.
Yeah. So what's the first couple of numbers on that?
It says lot. It's written over type, so it's hard to see. Like
09.
Oh yeah, 09, and then CPM 10 or something like that.
10, yeah.
Yeah. So 09 is September. So that was brewed just in the last few weeks.
And you can tell it. It tastes fresh. Yeah.
Yeah. So we do have that. Now, you know, I'll tell you, one of the learnings, you know, that we've had with distributors is, you know, good communication with them on what they have in their inventory, you know, and making sure that we're communicating on age of what they have, what they're moving. And if it's getting to the point where it's too old, and we talk about, hey, we need to bring that back.
Right.
All right. Well, there's a number of things that have gone really well for Parkersburg Brewing. Dan, what brewery accomplishments, are you most proud of?
Well, I mean, I think the most obvious one is the gold medal at the World Beer Cup with Cell Block 304.
Right.
Yeah, that's not too. That's not too many people do that here in West Virginia.
No, that was a great accomplishment for us. I mean, that was in 2018. We were 2 years old.
Yeah.
And you know, that's an interesting story in itself, because you know, Walt and I couldn't be at the award ceremony, and I was actually live streaming it at home. And it was getting late, right? Because I mean, the brown ale category was near the end of the ceremony, and you know, my wife had already gone to bed. I'm sitting here at the computer downstairs watching, and they get to brown ale, and they say, "Okay, the bronze goes to," and then the silver goes to. And I actually got up from the computer and started to walk upstairs and said, "Well, maybe next time," because I wasn't anticipating a gold. And I was about halfway up the stairs when I heard Parkersburg Brewing Company, Cell Block 304, and I just collapsed on the stairs. You know,
I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
That night was a whirlwind. I don't think I slept a wink, and probably finished a few cell blocks and at least a half a bottle of tequila. So good evening.
That's funny. It's good though. What about Walt? How do you, or what do you feel like is your best accomplishment or largest accomplishment for Parkersburg Brewing?
It's very hard to overstate.
Yeah, that one's a tough one.
I mean, to be number one, to win a gold medal at the World Beer Cup even as an experienced brewery, is a challenge. Competition's stiff. You're dealing with judges from all over the world, breweries from all over the world, and look, they're good. These aren't your mom and pop tap rooms that are putting beers in a beer cup.
They're not.
We're talking about the best of the best. I mean, they call it the Olympics of beer for a reason. And to come away with a gold was fantastic, and especially on a beer style.
Right.
Dan
That's
and I
a hard
were
style.
initially whether we should even produce it, but as we gained more experience with that particular product and made the modifications that we thought it needed to have, I mean, look, not only is it a world-class beer and still considered the best brown ale in the world, it's our number one seller.
Which it wasn't before the World Beer Cup, right? But now it is. And I know I'm butting in here, Walt, but I got to add, because I think this is an important point for us that we take some pride in with the World Beer Cup win. And that is that beer that was submitted to the World Beer Cup was produced at a commercial scale. It wasn't a small batch controlled scenario where we're only brewing for the World Beer Cup. It was made on our commercial system with every other batch of cell block that we make and distribute. And I think
It's a big deal.
I think that says something. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that does say a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I had to put a number 2 in accomplishments, honestly, I think it's our breadth of product line that we can offer around the course of a given year. I mean, we operate unique styles. We're not afraid to go out there and do something a little crazy, and we've done that.
Yeah. I count, you've got 8 core brands, I think, or year-round brands. And then I think, what do you have, 6 or 7, what you might call seasonals, I guess? Is that pretty standard?
Yeah. And so I've got to take a second, because I think my number 2, and it's really COVID related, and that is, how we've been able to turn on a dime and get creative and survive this monster so far, because it has been a significant challenge. And I think that's probably a topic later, so I won't talk too much about it now, but that's probably my number 2.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, of course.
Well, we've been talking about Cell Block 304, the brown ale, the American brown ale that won the gold medal at World Beer Cup, and I'm dying to taste it. I happen to have a can here, Aaron. You've got one. We're gonna open one up because we like to give you time to talk about a few of your beers you want to highlight, and then whether this is one you were going to highlight, you got to highlight it now, because you got to tell us about the beer and how it's made. And while I try it,
go ahead, Walt.
Oh, you get me. I like doing the descriptions, Dan.
Yeah.
So look, you're gonna pour a very traditional brown ale. In terms of its look, you're not going to get a very traditional brown ale in terms of what you're going to taste. What you should get in this particular product is, and we like to call it, we've kind of coined the term with another group, that it's really a 3-part sip. Think of it almost as a whiskey, right? You get a very nice toastiness on the front end of the product. The palate gets a little bit sweetened in the middle of the taste, and then you've got a bit of hot bitterness to clean it all up again for your next sip.
I definitely like that finish with that hot bitterness. It comes across in this brown ale,
Yeah, it pours really well.
And I guess that kind of makes it an American brown ale versus an English style. More.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And the honey sweetness in it, it's enough residual there to give you that bit of interesting, characteristic in the middle of the taste.
So what hops are you using in this? A pretty standard bittering hop or American?
Well, they're actually English bittering hops that we use. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Delicious.
Yeah, I mean, you're using an English bittering hop, but it's a lot more bitter than an English brown ale.
Yeah, we were a little more aggressive with our hop additions.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but like Walt was saying, it's got that touch of sweetness that comes through, and that malt sweetness that comes through, along with the chocolate, and that bitterness really is a nice balance. I I admire that. That's a beauty.
I too, and you really do get a lot of chocolate and malt, and not too bitter. It's blended really well. Congratulations, this is a really great beer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I don't want to take over like telling you what beers you want to talk about. So Dan, or Walt, whichever one wants to take a lead on it, another couple of beers that you'd like to highlight with us today.
I'll let Dan take first pick of this one.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about one that we actually just got approved today. That's going to be, what's that?
You stole mine.
Yeah.
I've got another one as backup. So.
Yeah, that we just got approved today. It's actually going to be initially a small batch brew, only available in the tap room. We're going to be releasing it on Halloween. And I know, Charles, you had sent me an email earlier about if we were going to be doing any Oktoberfest beers, and we decided to go in a little different direction this year. So, we had been doing Oktoberfest styles. So here on Halloween, we're going to be releasing a beer called Ring of Fire. And that beer is a double chocolate chili stout that we use some very aggressive hot peppers in, nice chocolate aroma, great chocolate taste.
Double chocolate, though. Why is it double chocolate?
Well, it's double chocolate because we introduced chocolate in the boil and we introduced chocolate in the fermenter.
So are there some chocolate malts in there? I mean, the roasted.
Yeah, there's chocolate malts. There's chocolate. There's
real chocolate then, like additions of cocoa nibs or something or. Yeah.
Yes, everything you just said.
Yeah, nibs.
Hershey's
nibs,
syrup. I don't know.
Nibs, chocolate, malt. We hit it pretty hard with chocolate, and then we got pretty aggressive with some of the peppers that we've used. So I'm real excited about that one. It's got a great aroma, great flavor, a nice sting at the end, but not enough sting that you don't want another sip. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Wow, I'm sorry we're not having our Hops and Heat festival down in Charleston this October. Well, that would be a perfect beer for that festival, but we're not having. So that's great. Aaron, did you have a comment?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is, as Dan said, it uses some aggressive peppers. It actually uses a mixture of the world's hottest peppers.
Ghost peppers.
When we talked about being edgy, we were edgy.
Yeah. So I mean,
but you didn't put too much in there because I know the peppers can overpower everything and just wipe you out.
No. It's very well balanced. So it's probably as well balanced as the bitterness on that Cell Block 304.
Nice.
And that's something that we're very careful about when we craft these recipes. Is balance, quality, flavor, aroma. And I think with this particular beer, we got pretty creative on how we were able to control that, because with hot peppers, they're pretty variable, and it's hard, hard to be able to control that. And I think we've come up with a pretty good process to where, we can consistently recreate that beer at the same level.
Now say the name of that beer again.
Ring of Fire.
Ring of Fire. I can't wait to see that label.
Yeah.
We definitely want pictures of that one.
It'll be on Facebook here probably later this week or early next week.
All right. And beer number 2 or another beer.
I'll take beer number 2. Another unique beer style for us. It's our Blackberry Sage Saison.
I like that one.
Yeah.
This was a beer that Dan and I designed, actually based upon a tea that I had. That was a Blackberry Sage tea, and we said, why not do this with a Saison? It'd be a perfect combination. And I think we joked around one Christmas that it's either going to be fantastic or it's just going to taste like sewage in a can.
You never know.
You never know.
Sometimes you don't.
But it turned out to be really a fantastic beer with a nice reddish hue to it when you pour it. It gives you some great Saison aroma and flavors from the yeast. You pick up the blackberry and you definitely pick up the sage in the back of the sip. To us, it was such a good representation of a unique Saison that in 2020, it was destined for the World Beer Cup. Unfortunately, that was canceled, but that would have been one of our entries in that competition this year because we had just had so much confidence in the product. And just really, in my opinion, a fantastic beer.
Yeah. Yep. That's two. Any third one, or you want to?
Yeah. So I think we do need to make another plug. Do you want to take this one, Walt? I think you know where I'm going.
Wow, I can't predict you anymore.
Yeah. What, Dan? I'm going to read your mind here.
I'll let you take it, Dan.
Well, so you're just being polite because I know you know what I'm talking about. And that is.
You have something new on the horizon here.
Well, no, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it in the market, Charles, and it's not necessarily a beer, but we are quite proud of what we've done with the hard seltzer product.
Yeah, I was wanting to talk about that, and if you hadn't brought it up, but since you did, just go ahead and talk about your hard seltzer.
So so I'll let Dan go, but I just want to be clear. I did know where his mind was going, but I have to give him a ton of credit on this. I mean, he picked this up as kind of a pet project for us, ran this thing soup to nuts, right down into the product design, process design, did everything. And I will tell you, it is a fantastic product, but it would be inappropriate for you to talk about his efforts on this thing.
Yeah, we need to know more about this because you brought it up. We have to hear, I think the craft beer community wants to hear, what's in it. What is a seltzer? I mean, it doesn't really describe what it is just by that word. So I would hope that you could tell us a little bit about how you make this product. Yeah,
so I'll talk a little bit about that, but I think the first statement I need to make is, one of the biggest concerns that we had when we started to work on this seltzer line was, that we didn't want to give a wrong impression to the craft beer community, right? That we were giving up on craft beer and putting all of our efforts into seltzer. And I think we've been able to successfully do that. But I think the key part to this seltzer is it's truly a craft product like our beers. And as you'll see on the cans, when you see it in the market, it states right on the can, brewed, not spiked. So this product it's made from scratch. It's a craft product that we brew in the same equipment that we brew our beers on. And it took some R&D and some development work on our end to figure out how to do it right, how to get the flavors right, how to get the product water clear. But I think we've been quite successful in doing that. And honestly, we've got some very, very good feedback, not only from consumers in the market, but distributors and people outside of the state, and comparing it, to other national brands. And, I think that product has a real good future ahead of it.
Well, I know you've started with 4 flavors, right?
Yeah.
At least what I've seen so far. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we currently have 4 flavors. And I think one thing we did with this product launch that was at a more obsessive compulsive level, if you will, than a lot of our beers is we spent a lot of time in consumer testing and product development and tasting panels. We got a ton of information from people when we were starting to put this together because it was such a different product that we wanted to make sure when we did it and when we launched it, it was right, it was what we wanted, and it met the market needs. And I'm super proud of the product. It's truly a craft product.
Okay, you're going around it. It's a craft product. How's it made?
Well, I mean, it's a fermented sugar-based product that's brewed in our brew house.
Yeah, most of them are that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But where do you get your flavorings? I mean, how do you? And there's a wide range of flavorings from inexpensive to extremely expensive. How do you decide?
So we've actually, we tested and analyzed flavors from a large array of suppliers, and through our tasting panels, one supplier really stood out based on the information that we got from the consumers. And, we were able to partner with this supplier. And actually, one of our flavors is a custom flavor that they didn't have on the shelf that they were able to develop for us based on our needs.
Would that be hibiscus peach?
The hibiscus punch? No, it would
punch.
actually,
I'm sorry. It's not peach. Punch.
it would actually be the green apple.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there are green apple flavors out there, but none of them were exactly what we wanted.
Yeah.
That's
and
a
they
tough
were
flavor.
It is, and they were able
Yeah.
to custom produce that for us with the flavor and the aroma that we were looking for.
Well, there you have it. Parkersburg Brewing has a seltzer on the market right now. And what's the line called? Make sure I get the name right.
Well, it's just Parkersburg Brewing Company hard seltzer. We batted around different names for that and decided that we weren't going to give it a name like we did our beers. We were just going to call it Parkersburg Brewing Company hard seltzer.
And describe your target market for this product.
I was going to say, where is it?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. This market is a lot more diverse than you would initially think. You've got your younger crowd, right, that really likes the seltzers, but there's a growing market for seltzers in the golf community. Guys out on the golf course, they want something to drink, but they don't want a heavy beer. Something light, refreshing. That's a really bigger market than I thought it was. That continues to grow.
I mean, it's 5% ABV, 102 calories, and 2 carbs, and
Right.
That's the attraction of the product.
And you've got you've got those communities. You've got the low carb community. You've got the lower calorie community, and then you've got the gluten-free community because, we're able to produce this beer and verify it through outside lab analytical testing that it's gluten-free. So,
yeah, and I think
Wow.
that is something that is important, not only as a marketing tool, but it's what people don't necessarily realize that because it's sold by a beer distributor or a beer manufacturer, that it doesn't have malt in it per se. I don't, obviously not. Yeah.
And we go through a rigorous cleaning process before we brew the seltzer to ensure that there's no gluten left in our process, and have been able to verify that through, like I said, outside testing. We've we played around with gluten-free beers, but I got to tell you, they are a bear to make. Having a gluten-free product in a seltzer, at least now we've got a good offering in that market.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear, and I appreciate you explaining that because it's a little a mystery. A lot of us that either home brewers or we don't really know what's in a seltzer. We can't make them. It's a process, at least that it's a little harder than and a little different from your traditional malt-based brewing.
Yep.
Yes.
Erin, go ahead.
Yeah, even in our little tiny region of the country, we have so many small breweries, and each one is obviously trying to make a name for themselves. So no little brewery can be great at everything. I'm curious what you guys at Parkersburg Brewing want to be the most known for. Like, how would you describe your primary focus?
So, well, I'll let you go after me, but to me, as an engineer and as a scientist, the most important thing that we're known for, and I think this is what brings customers back, is quality and consistency, right? You can make a good product, but if it's different every time you make it and you don't know what you're going to get, you're not going to be able to drive that return customer. So to me, using the science that we know and we're accustomed to be able to make a high quality product that's the same from batch to batch is extremely important. I don't know if there's any other small craft breweries in West Virginia that have the capability that we put in, but we have the capability to do IBU testing in-house. And that's super important to us to be able to check not only our hops, but our products, right? And is the bitterness level the same between batches, and has anything changed? And it's a great tool. So whenever we can afford the science, we use it. There's a lot of other things I'd love to be doing that we don't have the money to buy the equipment for, but yeah, I think that's key for me to be known for.
Yeah.
How about you, Walt?
Once again, I would have, for me, it's consistency. I think we've demonstrated we can produce some great tasting beers, but if you can't make those batch to batch in an identical fashion, it really doesn't mean anything.
Right.
I think that gets back to our process design and really the science we put behind the brewing process itself and the ingredients. It's how we handle our water. It's how we measure our in-process parameters, and really how we control our fermentations.
I just was saying that, Walt, you said you had a background in chemistry.
I'm a chemist by training.
Yeah. And Dan, what is that? Engineer, chemical engineer?
Yeah, I'm a chemical engineer.
Yeah, so that speaks volumes there. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Walt.
No, those are really the passion areas for Dan and I. I mean, look,
Sure.
Beer is typically what, on average, 95% water.
Mm-hmm.
Can't control your water, you don't have a good product.
Yep.
Agreed. Well, we're obviously in a very challenging time. I know earlier we mentioned COVID, and we've all been talking about COVID for what seems like forever. But with the pandemic and all, how would you describe your near-term priorities as far as how has COVID affected your business, and obviously how has that changed your goal for your business goals?
Yeah, so I mean, I think and Walt, I'll let you go after me again. I keep jumping in, but I think it slowed us down a little bit, right, on our long-term goals and our vision. But I think we've rolled with the punches and been creative where we needed to be. And to be honest with you, when we were shut down from a restaurant perspective, to roll into services like DoorDash, where we can provide the same type of services, and then the governor signing that emergency order where we could actually deliver beer.
Right.
Those things made a big difference.
Sure.
It was a struggle, but then now that we're back open, right? Yes, it's not 100% seating capacity, but from a restaurant/brew pub perspective, we have knocked it out of the park. I mean, we've taken this opportunity to really get better at managing costs, at managing the taproom operations, and our revenues are in very good shape from a taproom perspective. Now, to be honest, wholesale is a little different story, especially with Morgantown shut down.
Right.
Morgantown is one of our premier sales spots, so we've had to shift our wholesale distribution focus more away from kegs and more into cans, which is also a challenge when there's an aluminum can shortage. So
right,
we've
heard a little about that as well.
Yeah, so we've had to manage that, but I think looking at where we're at, looking at where the issues are, and how we morph, if you will, to be able to handle that challenge until we get back to normal, is something that I think we've done at a pretty reasonable pace and not drug our feet to make the changes we needed to make to be able to survive.
When you look at it, it's unprecedented, right? Everybody says that. It's probably overstated or understated. I'm not sure which. It's just the environment we live in. I mean, I speak to my colleagues in Ireland today, and they're going through a national lockdown again. So, in the grand scheme of things, I think we've taken advantage also of the pandemic to make changes in our business and the way we think about our business. I mean, with what Dan has done in the tap room to promote not just cost management, but even to promote sales and getting people to come in to sit and feel comfortable and safe.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
In the tap room has actually been a tremendous success for us. On the wholesale side, I agree. Wholesale sales are down. Look, I mean, from 2016 through the first quarter of 2020, we were a double-digit growth business. And in the state of West Virginia, new to craft beer, that's unheard of. Now, the pandemic hits, obviously it hits us in wholesale, but we've been able to shift our attention in that distribution business to canning, as Dan said. And thank goodness we made the decision a year and a half ago to actually bite the bullet, purchase the necessary capital to be able to can product in-house ourselves. And we've also taken advantage of the pandemic to expand our brewery operations. While we have time to focus on, re-engineering the facility, replumbing the facility, expanding that capacity, bringing the Seltzer on board, it gave us an opportunity to take a step back and look in the mirror and think a little bit. And I'd like to think that we actually did a fine job from a business perspective and managing our way through that and actually stabilizing the business in a very unstable environment.
Yeah, and I think by doing that, when we get through this, we're going to be much stronger and a much better position than we were when we went into COVID. So, I do believe we've really leveraged where we're at and tried to take as much of an opportunity, make as much of an opportunity out of a bad situation that we could.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about now coming out of COVID. If we're project a year ahead from now or something, that maybe things are back to normal, and give me a couple of quick snapshots of the priorities for growth, where they're going to be, you think, like a year from now, if we are, back to a fairly normal beer market.
Dan, I'll pounce on this one initially.
Yeah, I'm going to let
From
you
my perspective, the wholesale business is where we want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Our tap room is obviously the front end that allows people to come in and try different things we're doing. It's a great sandbox, if you will, for new products. But at the end of the day, it's really about growing our distribution network and growing our expansion into other states. And where I'd like to see us be is, getting that product into Ohio, getting across Ohio. And then I think we're ready to take on the giants in Maryland. And beyond.
Hey, listen, Ohio has hundreds of local breweries that are out there fighting for that distribution. That's going to be a tough market to take on. I'll just tell you, because I'm over there a lot. Man, they're fighting among themselves for distribution. You can't get shelf space over there. How are you going to do that? I'm curious, really, how?
So it's a different market than West Virginia, right? When I look at that market.
Yeah, it's full.
That market's about the product. That market's about bringing something unique that they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
That market's about labeling that says, hey, I've got award-winning beers that I'm bringing to market that I can now compete with, because that sells for them. That sells in Colorado, that sells in California, it sells in Maryland, PA, and New York.
Yeah.
And look, those are the real keys, I think, in those types of markets. I think each one of our states is slightly different. And with a different focus. West Virginia is a novice craft beer market. I think we all have to agree to that. And as much as I want to expand distribution in other states, I'd also like to be able to continue to grow and educate the craft beer public in West Virginia on what these products really are and what they're about.
Yeah, we've still got a ways to go. I believe that very much. We've got a lot of opportunity and a lot of headspace, so we can grow our market here.
I think we've made great strides, Charles, in the last several years. But like anything, I think there's always definitely a lot of room for growth.
Agreed.
And look, I think, on top of it, maybe I let a little bit of a cat out of a bag. I mean, Dan and I do see opportunity for Parkersburg Brewing Company brand and logo to be on international products. And we're definitely working on that already. That's clearly in the works with a collaboration product that hopefully will be launched in the midst of COVID this fourth quarter. And you may see a can with our logo on it in Ireland, the UK, Belgium, France, and Germany.
Well, that'd be great. That would
be great. Yeah.
So any other new products you're looking at exploring? I mean, I know it's a big thing to just tackle seltzers, so maybe that's where your focus is. I don't know.
Well, certainly this collaboration beer I just mentioned is something that'll be coming up towards the end of the year around the holiday season. It will be a product that is, and we've done one before. I mean, if people look at our product line, they're going to see that we do have an Irish bracket in our product line. But we do intend to introduce a collaboration beer towards the end of the year that is really a spin-off of that original recipe, but much, much better. It'll also be the first bracket that would be brewed and potentially on sale in Ireland in 100 years.
Wow.
This is a product that I personally am looking forward to. It's a historical style that does not get a lot of attention. And the product that we currently have in our line has a bit of a cult following already. So, we viewed it as a niche opportunity for us to move forward. And it's very unique. It's high ABV beer. Like I said, an old style that has a ton of history behind it. And it just has kind of fallen off the radar screen, if you will, from the craft beer market.
Well, you heard it here first on West Virginia Beer Roads.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Dan, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I just, Walt said it had kind of fallen off the radar. I think what's interesting is that, even with the history that beer style has, it's fallen off the radar in its home country as well. So to be able to bring that back the way we are it's really exciting, and it's been a great collaboration opportunity for us.
That's awesome. We look forward to it very much. And I think that probably wraps up this session. Dan and Walt, thank you so much for being on this episode of West Virginia Beer Roads. We really appreciate your time, and we wish you the best of luck with everything. So cheers.
Yeah, let me just add, I think, Walt, you're in Morgantown, right?
I am in Morgantown right now.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank you for getting those beers at Mountaineer Field, so we could actually get a Parkersburg beer at Mountaineer Field. I love that. At least last year, I know.
This brings us to the close of another podcast. Remember, you can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast host. Thank you for listening to West Virginia Beer Roads.
West Virginia Beer Roads is a production of BrilliantStream.com.